Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure everyone is probably feeling about as exhausted as I am. What a load of information today. So my name is Alizee, and I work and born and raised in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And for the last few years, we've really been dealing with the onset of stony coral tissue loss disease and how to deal with that in a really small place with very little government or external funding. We are a small nonprofit that's been around for about 13 years, completely volunteer-based until recently, about a year and a half ago, when I was able to get a position with the NGO. We work on education, research, and advocacy, and we're responsible for everything from mooring installations to for water sports to in-situ coral nurseries and educational outreach programs. And since 2019, we've been on the forefront of this fight against stony coral tissue loss disease. So in this short presentation, I'm going to take you through a little journey of dedication, willpower, and innovation in capacity building. So I'm not going to go through the transmission of the disease through the country, but just to show you quite how quickly it did spread. And so at first, we didn't know what we were looking at. The first time I saw this disease, I had no idea. I'd never even heard of SCTLD. And so in August of 2019, we were invited by the MPA Connect Agra NOAA group to Key West, which is where I really started to learn about it. And the first step from there was to appeal to the public, potential corporate sponsors whose livelihood depend on the maritime and marine environment of the islands. And by September of 2019, just through private donations, we'd managed to raise almost $50,000, which I know is very, very little, but it went a long way, and we had little to no, read me volunteering, human capacity to do anything. So the tracking of the spread was the first step, and this would not have been possible without the dive shops. So I was given a free spot on a dive provo boat any day that they had a spot available to go out and monitor. And for the first 6 months, I think I was the only one doing that. So any information we have about the spread of SCTLD through the Caicos Islands was through that system, monitoring and just collaborating with the dive shops. So I conducted over 100 surveys between August and December, and that was only on volunteer base. So as I said, non-existent human capacity, restrictions on intervention due to permitting meant that all we could really do was document the spread and see what happens. It spread over 40 miles in under 4 months. So it was quite the experience. But now we needed to get a team. There's only so much one person can do, and we really needed to engage volunteers in dive shops. And it was a very difficult conversation initially. Dive shops were unwilling to listen or too afraid to accept that there was something that might take away their livelihoods and their economy. I've learned that actually the tourists that come down, even if they've been down for the last 30 years, they see the dolphin or the shark or the ray and they're like, wow, it was amazing. And I'm thinking, well, how can you not recognize how much it's changed? So getting dive shops to understand that their economy wasn't threatened and that their reactionary fear was not necessary, we really started to get a lot more donations and time, more people involved. I don't know if we're still only 25 countries. I think we're somewhere around there. But we were the 7th country to get it, and that made that initial capacity building really difficult because we had very little information. So we tried to promote the dive shops that got involved. We tried to really, instead of the carrot and the stick, instead of the stick, we try to give the carrot, right? You're trying to really not yell at the people who aren't doing anything, although I wanted to. But you're trying to give more information and get the word out on those that are doing it really well. So we engaged a lot with Facebook, Instagram. We had a lot of publicity. I went and did multiple visits to all the different dive shops, a few different interviews, as well as, different interviews, and then trying to engage community support. So that worked out quite well, and 2019 goes by pretty quickly as we watch things go, and all of a sudden 2020 arrives. And in January of 2020, we were finally given a research permit to start treatment trials. And within 2 weeks of our first treatment trial finally going out, lockdown happened. And we were locked down completely, not able to leave our homes for about 2.5 months. In hindsight, I know that we were quite lucky in the Turks and Caicos comparatively, but we had to figure out what can we do. So at that point, it was like where there's a will, there's a way. And we started reaching out online. People are bored, they're sitting at home. Zoom became a great tool. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to learn about coral because they just wanted something to do. So that was really, really helpful. And I called it the golden age of volunteerism in some ways. We worked together for a greater cause, making the most of a bad situation. And after about 4 Zoom sessions, I was like, why am I going through this for 3 hours every time? Let's just record it and turn it into an online video. So I created a 4-part online program where you could learn coral identification, disease differentiation, and some monitoring protocols, none of which I invented. I just was very grateful to borrow from Sea Grant, Florida, from AGRA, from different things that I had learned at that workshop in 2019 and just compiled it for the average user like myself. Unlike most of you, I do not have a hard science background. So condensing information in a way that your volunteers can understand it was one of the successes I think that we had. We had an amazing outreach system where we went through media news outlets. We had a few great publicities through the BBC and Bloomberg Green that really helped kind of get the word out there. And then working with community-based, so having these kind of live events online, trying to engage a community that doesn't necessarily see the ocean or get involved necessarily. So 2020 in numbers, just to give you an idea, we had these 2 in-person training sessions, but by the end of 2020, we had 6 treatment sites set up. We had over 1,000 hours of in-water volunteer time and tanks filled by dive shops because we were opened locally but not internationally yet. And I wish that this was still the case today because everybody's like, wow, you got so many people involved. But it really was the golden time of volunteerism, and it is a bigger job now because once that money starts coming back and the tourism starts coming back, it becomes more difficult to sustain those. But it's something that we have been continuing to do. We've been able to create partnerships, which have been a key to our capacity building. I work directly with the dive shops, with the liveaboards, creating itineraries, which I'll talk about momentarily, that allow citizen scientists to get involved, but more importantly, or parallel to that, it allows the researchers or the trained surveyors to be out on the boat at the same time. So it gives us this mechanism to get out there for a week at a time without the very, very high costs of a research vessel for a week. So that's been quite good. So it really does take a village, and we kind of grew like that and got different stakeholders to understand. So getting the hotels to accept that, well, without that reef, then that beautiful beach that protects their giant structures is gonna start eroding away. And so we did a lot of outreach. And people keep saying, well, you know, did you have to do a lot of talking and a lot of begging? And the truth is yes. You really need to have the will and just be persistent. I like to say overt kindness and borderline annoying persistence is pretty much how I've accomplished most of what we've done. And now I'm just so thankful to say that in 2022, we've actually been able to begin a coral rescue and genetic banking program based on a grant that we got from the John Ellerman Foundation. So I've been writing grants for 4 years, and this is the first one we've received. If I can give any advice, is we reworded it as a feasibility study. Instead of saying, hey, I'm a tiny little nonprofit, please give me a bunch of money to do something none of us know how to do, I said, please give me some money to hire someone to help me learn how to do what we need to do. And you can do it. I know that raceways take a long time and they're really expensive. Well, we built one. I learned how to fiberglass. We have people who build boats and who work with that in our various island communities. And so becoming a little more creative, a little more innovative with resources and human resources is one of the successes that we've had. And I always like to kind of wrap up with my most recent very happy story, which was once we got this permit to start, we're like, okay, well, we need to find these corals. How are we going to decide what we're doing? And I found out that this mega marina, mega docks were getting ripped up and put at the dump. And so at the landfill. So we jumped in the water, and I'm like, that's a pillar coral. That's a maze coral. I was like, we can't put these at the dump. So with 2 days, again, social media, I've never been into social media. Now I know quite a bit about it. It is a very useful tool for human capacity building. So social media, we made a call out, and within 2 days, we had 30 people, 3 boats, and we collected over 400 pieces, of which about a third were whole colonies and on the ESA list. So it was really a beautiful thing. And everybody said to me, Alizee, they came for you, not for the coral. Some of these people didn't really care about the coral, but I was just so excited about it and like adamant that we had to do it that people showed up. And so it comes back to passion, and it comes back to inciting passion in others. And that's something that I think is so important. So I'm trying to figure out a better phrase for it, if anybody knows, but meaningful tourism and liveaboard itineraries. Over the last few years, I've been developing different itineraries that will allow researchers to go out on these boats in the Turks and Caicos, and then in the evenings we can give talks and connect with the citizens or divers that are coming down. And then the other thing is just getting creative. Just get creative. Cocktails and conservation. You'll notice an alcohol-based theme here. Don't hold it against me, but rum-powered research is probably my biggest success, and we were able to raise over $28,000 for a research trip to the largest uninhabited island in the region, East Caicos, last year. So the anthropogenic, unaffected reefs there, and being able to compare them to pre-SCTLD is really, really huge. So we did a small promotion with Mount Gay, and that led to me being like, well, if Mount Gay is going to give us money, why wouldn't the local rum give us money? So I kind of leveraged that against the local company, and they came back and they got involved, and it's kind of growing and growing. And I've created a system now or a program every few months. I'll do a hotelier's happy hour. Again, just bringing in more people, giving them an understanding of what it is we're doing and why it's important to them. Not necessarily asking them for money, but just getting them involved, and then kind of throwing that, hey, what about corporate sponsorship kind of on the side. But what I've actually found is that has brought human capacity as well. Because out of the people that come, a lot of them actually want to get personally involved. They don't just want to give you money, they want to give you staff, and they want to give you their help. And so that's been a really wonderful thing. And we've done a few different public engagement events. But basically, all in all, because I know I am very much out of time, the main thing I want to say is that action is the antidote to despair. That's what I've found, and compassion inspires action. So if you can show people how much it matters and why, and then it tends to inspire action, and thank you.